Okay. My name is George Hayes. I'm the Deputy Borough Manager, and I'm facilitating these needs assessments meetings for opioid remediation or opioid abatement. We have a committee of experts up here who work in the field, different areas, whether it's recovery or treatment, um, or it's something called harm reduction, which has to do with if you overdose and you need an injection, if you will, of the naloxone, used to be Narcan, then that is in the classification of harm reduction, and then prevention. So those are the four areas, of course, that are on that survey that I handed out as well. Um, the committee's charter from the borough manager who set it up is we're taking about a 6-8 week period, and we're doing multiple meetings, one in Palmer, one Wasilla, and one here in Willow, to come up with the surveys. We're hoping close to now 200 on the surveys, and use those surveys and these community meetings and the experts' opinions, or I would guess experiences would be a better word for it, experiences, then to come up with a needs assessment. What are the greatest needs for using this opioid settlement money? And the committee will be chartered to come up with that. I'm not a voting member of it, so um, and I'll introduce them in just a second. But that's our charter, to do that needs assessment and then submit that to the assembly. The assembly doesn't have to take the order that they have them in, but the assembly will do the approval on spending the money. Usually they will take a committee like this as recommendations, and they'll follow that, but that's still up to them. There's 7 members. It's the regular assembly members that are from each of the districts. And so, and once that is done, they'll turn it back over to us to say, okay, these are the priority order, excuse me, and they will then give us the amounts they want to spend per year. And we get about, excuse me, it varies from year to year, but we get about 100 to 150,000 a year. Um, that's just though in the assembly, I mean, in the borough's share of the settlement money. The state gets many millions of dollars, and we will also be able to tap into those funds, but we don't have the guidelines from the state yet. They're kind of doing the same thing, and the governor's advice council on opioid remediation is sitting down and determining how that will all work and how the organizations can submit to request funds from the state level. So that's the process. Sitting at the table, I'll go down they tell me we have to be close to these mics or it's not gonna. So when you all are talking, and we're also live streaming, just for your knowledge. And so if you're not close to the mic, the streaming folks out there that are listening will not be able to hear us. Michael Carson is down on the end. He has lots of hats, but he's the president of the Mat-Su Opioid Task Force, vice president of My House, vice president of True North Recovery. And what I'll do is I'll introduce them one at a time, and then I'll give them however long, 5 to 10 minutes or so, to talk about their portion, their background, and what they're doing towards this effort. So, Michael.
Thank you, George. First things first, I want to thank George for his leadership on this important meeting. And I wanted to take a moment to let everybody know real quickly, the opioid epidemic has unfortunately taken many lives. We know that in Alaska, 1 out of 3 people have been directly affected by the opiate epidemic. And some of you know that we're in the 3rd phase of that epidemic, and dealing with fentanyl, which is 50 times more powerful than heroin and 100 times more powerful than morphine. George mentioned harm reduction, and I just wanted to let everybody know that we're going to have some naloxone training 27th of this month at the My House site. I wanted to thank Carl. They're having a recovery picnic that day, and I'll let Carl talk more about that if he likes. We've had to move over to Cuslado, which is an 8 milligram antidote to the for an overdose. This was introduced last spring. Originally, we were using Narcan. Narcan only has 4 milligrams. And due to the strength of the fentanyl, when it adheres to the opioid receptor, we needed a bigger bang for our buck to knock it off so that we could ensure that the brain and spinal cord could send a message to breathe or you're going to die. So please, we're recommending that everyone carry Cuslado. That's the name brand. The medical term is naloxone. So just also, I wanted to let you know real quickly, this is 1 gram of Splenda. If this was 1 gram of fentanyl, it would kill 500 people. If I took this key and ripped it open, just the amount that fits on the end of it, 2 milligrams could be a fatal overdose. So we are dealing, which I refer to as the beast. We used to chase the dragon, referring to heroin, but now we're dealing with something that is contaminating everything. Fentanyl is in heroin, it's in cocaine, it's in meth, counterfeit pills, Percocets, Xanax, Oxy, Adderall, excuse me. And it also is coming in the form of rainbow fentanyl, rainbow sweet tarts, Skittles, sidewalk chalk. So it's very prevalent, and we're so glad that you're here tonight so that you can give us your input on how we decide to spend this $3.2 million over an 18-year period, I believe. And again, those choices are prevention, treatment, harm reduction, and recovery. So thank you for being here tonight. It's really important.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, James. I'm going down here. So James Savage is Director of Operations at Dillon's Place or Day One Center. Recovery, Detox Treatment, Withdrawal Management Center. So, James.
Good evening.
Sorry.
Good evening, everybody. My name is James Savage. Like George was just alluding to, I'm the Director of Operations for Day One Center. Day One houses the Mat-Su Valley's only withdrawal management program, as well as a walk-in behavioral health urgent care, for lack of a better term. We currently house the mobile crisis team as well. I am currently sitting on the Alaska Mental Health Board at the pleasure of the governor. Additionally, I'm the co-chair for the Mat-Su Opioid Task Force. And more important than all of that, I'm a person in long-term recovery from a substance use disorder, which means I haven't found the reason to take a mind or a mood-altering substance since 7/27 in 2015. This work is very, very important. Getting the community's engagement, involvement, and their voice heard in all of this is incredibly important. You'll hear it said here tonight. It was said during the assembly meeting or the committee meeting last month. We are a steering committee. It is our due diligence to hear what you guys bring to the table and get involved in this process. So thank you very much for taking the time to be here. This is something that affects all of us in one way, shape, or form. I can tell you that there is no shortage of sick people that have been affected by this opioid crisis in our community. It is not slowing down, as Michael alluded to. It is just getting worse. The drugs are getting more powerful. Our ability to counteract those substances is becoming more and more limited. And the reality is this is not going away. This money is not enough to cure the issue. Our hope is to have the grandest impact on the least served and our most vulnerable population with the money that is available. So thank you for taking your time to be here.
Thank you very much. Since we're on that side of the table, I want to introduce Dawn Deaver. Dawn is a registered nurse. She works at the Mat-Su Public Health Center. That is a state of Alaska position. Don?
Thank you. So, hi, my name is Dawn Deere. I am a public health nurse with the Mat-Su Public Health Center in Wasilla. And so, part of my role at the Public Health Center as a public health nurse is in harm reduction. And so, that's one of our priorities is providing education on the naloxone kits and being able to provide the naloxone kits to not only our clients that come to our center for services, but also to community members that come to our center. We do also do outside activities and where we can provide naloxone education and kits to community members that attend those events as well. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Don. Next up, Carl Soderstrom. He's the CEO of True North Recovery and the co-founder of Fiend to Clean. Carl.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Carl Soderstrom, and it is an honor to be here and be a part of this committee. First and foremost, addiction is a chronic, progressive, fatal illness of the brain of which there is no known cure. The sad reality is this problem is continuing to grow and destroy the lives of our friends, our family members, our neighbors, our children, and we as a community need to do something different. I find it. I'm also a person in recovery, and I find that this committee and this opportunity is extremely unique in that we as a community have an opportunity to bring our ideas to the table and decide what we do with this money. But more importantly than the money is the collaboration. It's an opportunity for us to get fresh ideas on how to solve this problem. We've been doing treatment for the last 40, 50 years, very similarly to now than to how we were doing it back then. This opportunity for our community can come in a lot of different shapes and sizes and forms, and there is no bad idea. There are priorities that we're asking the community to help us identify. Those priorities are treatment, recovery, harm reduction, and prevention. And that's not to say that one is more important than the other. However, you may have a great idea in one of those areas that is not seen programming or funding or support, and we really want to hear about them so that we can support those efforts to make a difference. We started our organization a few years ago just simply because we wanted to stop burying our friends, and unfortunately, we're still burying our friends. And so, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to be a part of the solution. And for those that are listening online and that are here today, we're very eager to hear your thoughts on what areas we should focus on, and to start brainstorming ideas of ways that we can impact this epidemic and start making some changes that help people. So thank you for letting me be here.
Thank you, Carl. We do have one more committee member who was not able to be here tonight, and she is Leslie Chisholm. She's the mental and behavior health supervisor for the Mat-Su School District. So we have somebody, at least in one portion or another of all four of the areas up here on the committee. And as Michael mentioned, there's 2.3 million, but we don't know exactly how much per year. It would be a lot easier if we did. And I do this, I know you can't read this, but this is a chart of the 18 years. It lists the pharmacies, the distributors, and the manufacturers who were in the settlement and how much they're scheduled to pay each year. But in some cases, like last year, one of the distributors paid 5 years up front. So we got about 200,000 more last year than we thought we were going to get. And it makes it difficult to be able to do a yearly total from the assembly. So we'll have to figure that portion out once we come up with the needs assessment. But that's where you all can help us. And we do ask that you come opinions and ideas, and we would love to hear from you. The mic is right there. And we'll just, rather than a sign up, if you want to come forward, please go ahead and come on up. And it's going to be an interactive one. It's not like the assembly where there's no questions to be asked and that. Please, if you've just got a question or a comment, we would love to hear from you.
And I just really quick would like to add that there's probably more than two, but there's two different ways that this is approached. Because there's funding coming over a long period of time, we would like to hear ideas and proposals for things that may be an ongoing kind of funding need, as well as one and dones. So like if we had $20,000, one that the curriculum one is one that's very heavy on my heart and mind, a project that could be funded at one time that could have a lasting impact. And so when you're thinking of potential recommendation, there's at least those two, these kind of ongoing projects, and then also these singular type of projects like developing a thing or creating a poster or an ad or whatever it is. Just wanted to share that thought.
Okay. And if you would, when you come up, give us your name too. Linda, I know you, but if you'd give us your name, please.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming. My name is Linda Oxley, and I do want to thank Mr. Hayes, the staff, all of you who have come to make this opportunity to hear our opinions available. I'm a non-credentialed clinical nurse specialist trained at the master's degree level, and I have just shy of 5 decades of experience working with babies, children, and families. And as must be obvious, many of the babies that we see are directly or indirectly affected. And so that is my perspective, is the young child and their family. All 4 areas for financial assistance are going to be very valuable, whatever you decide. But I do think in helping to address the long-term consequences of the opioid epidemic, I'm going to propose and support prevention. My framework is child and family development. The only role models that a child has up to about age 7 is their parents or their nuclear family. They're not developmentally capable of absorbing more than from those people. And you see that a lot of times the generational continuation of problems, whatever it is, but addiction being one of them, or ways of behaving being another one. And so my suggestion is that we focus on that child. After about age 7, and each child's a little unique, the role models increasingly become their peers, up through then into the teenage years, where there are very few adults who can make an impact on a given child. So to me, to break the cycle of addiction means that we need to find ways to impact the nuclear family of the very young child, the baby and the young child. And therefore, helping the parents role model that they can make changes, role model that they can face situations and that they can recover, and they can make difference and improvements in choices that they then incorporate as they evolve their little developmental selves and grow up themselves. And these improvements and choices come through as parenting, so supporting the parenting. There are some really superb models that we have here in the state of Alaska. I'm sure there are many more, but the 2 I want to highlight are the Nutoxivic program, which is a nurse family partnership sponsored by South Central Foundation. And it is a nurse home visiting program that works with families from about 28 weeks gestation when a woman is pregnant or a family is pregnant, up through that child's age 2. And they are totally non-judgmental, totally accepting of who the relationships are, what's happening in the home, and then actively engage in developing the relationship to promote healthy choices, new knowledge, and activating resources that they will be able to bring to the child and family. They have a tremendous track record of success. And it's the old style public health nursing. Way back in the day, I think maybe George and I, and maybe you are old enough to remember the old days when public health nurses could go to the home. And this kind of replicates that, but in a very specialized and programmatic way. And then the second one I know less about, and that's the Beacon Hill Safe Families for Children. And they provide private foster care for families that need a little child housing for short periods of time or longer periods of time. And most importantly, they keep the kids and the families out of the OCS system. And they're apparently very, very, very well vetted for doing exactly what that allows, is protect that family from being broken from the outside. One concrete recommendation, and you may already have this on within your group somewhere, is to suggest to make sure that there's a leader of the United Way of Mat-Su to be an ongoing member of your planning and decision-making group. Those folks are incredible at knowing what the resources are in all 4 areas of the work that you're trying to improve on. And I think that they would provide not only the broad overview help, but they will also have some specific programmatic improvements to the standards as you develop them and as the different programs get funded. Thank you again for this opportunity. I'm going to look forward to the process and the results of this endeavor, and I wish you the best of luck. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. I forgot, does anybody have any questions for her from the panel?
I wanted to let you know that the opioid settlement that is coming to the state, just so you have a heads up, that there's going to be a total of $99 million. There are 7 or 9 regions that are receiving 15%, and the borough is one of those regions. Silla City got some money. Palmer didn't make the threshold. They had to have 10,000. So there'll be $85 million coming to the state.
Nice.
They're looking at investing part of that and creating an endowment so that that money can last a long period of time. And so I wanted to recommend that when the state starts looking for applications, that you also go to the state with your ideas.
Thank you.
Right,
Okay.
because that will be another area that they can provide funding for the programs that you mentioned. And I believe that that upstream primary prevention is vital.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, and I believe that they'll be looking at that in the next legislative session. And so there's going to be more money available. So just wanted to make sure you knew that that's an option for you also.
Thank you. I'll keep that in mind.
Yes.
Thank you, Michael. Absolutely, that money going to the state, the long-term fund that he's talking about, 70% of that money goes into that long-term one because they want to make sure that that endowment, if you will, is set up for decades to come. We don't just treat now and it's done, so that we have some method of pulling money and treating individuals. And then the other 15% is going to be available starting the first year after the legislature makes up their mind on how they're going to spend it. The Governor's Advisory Council is going to present that essentially to the legislature and then the legislature. And there is a bill right now before them, but I don't know if they're going to get to it. As you all know, they just went into a special session today to try to finish the budget, but I don't know if they're going to make it to that piece of legislation or not. But okay, anybody else, please?
Hi, my name is Katie Stavick, and I live out here in Houston. And that's where I'm going to speak to these areas out here. I don't know what it would fit into, if it's education or prevention or treatment, but I would like to see some programs set up within the schools to address having Narcan available within the schools. I know that's probably an uphill fight, given our current school district, or I'm sorry, our school board, but Houston has a huge problem. We lost a student in Big Lake last year, and it is probably overdose. I can't speak for Willow and beyond, but that is where I would like to see some money. Education in the schools. Kids are bored, and that's what they're turning to. We see it in Houston. So yeah, that's what I would like to see addressed, is having some Narcan in the schools and some opportunities for education in the schools. That's it.
Thank you, Katie. And thank you for all your support and articles that you have done for Dylan's Place and my house and the opioid task force. We really appreciate everything you're doing out there. It's my understanding that the schools do have naloxone and that the nurses have that in their office. I've heard that, I know in the Anchorage School District, they even have it at the elementary schools. I'm not sure exactly what the status is in Mat-Su as far as having that available. Um, One anecdote is that nationally, adolescent drug use is on the decline, but the caveat is that youth and adolescents that are using drugs are using so much more powerful drugs than, say, at 60s or 70s. Marijuana maybe in the 60s, maybe THC content, maybe 5%. Now we're talking 20 to 30%. Dabbing it will increase that to 80%. Kids are using Percocet, they're crushing them, snorting them, taking tinfoil, taking the butane and snorting them, inhaling them. So I believe that you're absolutely spot on that the school district could be utilized as an insurance policy that every middle school and high school student had that information. I know that Carl and I believe Kirby a couple years ago were in the middle school, and that was very well received. And so I also believe that parents are a huge, vital partnership in this to be able to provide that information. However, they need to have the most current and accurate information about what's out there and what different kinds of forms it's taking. And I truly believe that it needs to start in middle school. And that presentation that you and Kirby did, was that at Wasilla Middle School?
Yeah, I'd love to share on that experience because it's really stuck with me over the last couple of years. We went to entire 8th grade class, so 13, 14-year-old kids at Wasilla Middle School. We went to the health class and every health class. So we did about a 20-minute presentation and just shared with them our personal experiences. And we also interviewed each one of those kids. And I don't quote me on the exact number, but we interviewed about 150 kids. About 120 of those kids said that they had access to prescription drugs. They said about 90 of them had access to marijuana. That stuck out like crazy to me, that there were more kids that could get their hand on opiates than they could pot. Furthermore, the majority of those kids thought that they were safe, that opiates were safe because they were prescribed by a doctor. Now, that was 2.5, 3 years ago, but that was extremely alarming for me. And you mentioned that it may be an uphill battle, but I firmly believe that it's a battle worth fighting. And without getting into it, we certainly don't mind talking politics in schools. We can do sex education in schools, but for some reason we shied away from addiction and mental health on a classroom level. We tend to we have a counselor for that. Let's go talk about that off to the side. When in reality, we need to be educating our young folks. Every young person at every classroom about these topics and preparing them. This is not the generation that just say no is going to work. We need to give them truth and reality about not just what the drugs will do to them in the short term, but the long term. One of the things that we shared in that experience was what detox was like, and none of those kids had any idea that if they got hooked, that they would experience physical and mental withdrawals that would be excruciating to them. They didn't realize that there were long-term health implications from those withdrawal symptoms. And these are things that we need to have a discussion about. I will also share that since being a part of this panel, addressing our school district and education and prevention efforts has been widely supported from community members. And so I don't think it's an uphill battle. And if it is, we should push on for it. Well, thank you for your comments.
I think that conversation that Carl was referring to has to, in my mind, has to change a little bit. The idea of tolerance, dependence, and addiction is a process. However, today, because of fentanyl, one pill can kill. And so it's a little bit different. Carl was referring to a curriculum, Kelsey's lesson. There is an addendum to Kelsey's lesson just on fentanyl. And I have to update that every 2 weeks because of everything new. And the newest one was May 5th through the 12th. And if you haven't had a chance, you might want to go to this Alaska State Troop A law enforcement group. I want to say 62 people were arrested.
It was
Firearms.
62 and it was right down my street.
Right.
So.
And there was over 1,000 grams, 600 grams of heroin, 268 grams of meth. That's just in the valley. Firearms, they talked about the street value. That was just one. There was a bust in Juneau 2-3 weeks ago, 5,000 pills at the airport, 6,000 2 weeks later on a traffic stop, $150,000 just for the 5,000 pills. It's rampant. And Carl is spot on when we're talking about, when we educate, be talking about a catchy slogan like DARE, or just, scaring them with reefer madness or something like that. They really need to have the most accurate and honest and current information laid out so they can make better choices to stay healthy, safe, and thriving. So I really appreciate you being in schools, because I heard that was very, very successful. And I think it's something that, as community members, I would suggest that you all advocate to the school district and ask them what are they doing around drug education and prevention. Maybe some investigating journalism.
Yeah, no pressure or anything. And I think it is a great opportunity for community members to get in front of the school board and ask those questions. And, this is not a criminal issue. It's a public health crisis, right? The criminal issue is a consequence of these ongoing issues. But the reality is we've got this idea that there's some kingpin out there, and the reality is that's just not true. These are everyday folks that are struggling with their own addictions and peddling it. And certainly there's a criminal element to it. But we need to address this as a public health emergency, because that's really what it is. And that's how we get to a place of healing. And a great place to start is with our school boards.
One last thing, besides going upstream, once we're up there, personally, I believe that we really need to drill down, and we need to be looking at some holistic issues around trauma and ACEs, and that we need to really be addressing mental health, or the lack thereof, because we know that many youth are dealing with issues of anxiety and depression. And so, that mental health piece is so important.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? One thing I want to mention, because this is being live streamed, that we do have on the borough's webpage, we have this opioid remediation needs assessment survey that we handed out here. And there is a link you can go to. It has a barcode on there, but also you can just go to it's a SurveyMonkey product. And behind that, you'll be looking for the SurveyMonkey opioid assessment is the key on there if you're searching for that. And we'd love to have you go online. For those of you out there watching, we'd love to have you go online and fill out the survey as well. The more we get in there, I think the more valid the survey will be. And we would love to hear from you. There's also a section in there for comments if you want to add comments on there, as well as just rating the 4 different areas and which one you think is number 1 as importance, and down all of them are important. We know that. Um, but if it comes down to a limited amount of money, then somebody has to make the decision on where we spend that money to do the most good. Okay, more comments. Some other comments from the panel? Okay. Well, I appreciate everyone coming out. I think this is such a worthy cause that we need to get more involved in than we have in the past. And we've now, I think, have a platform for that, both at our level on a less funding level than the state, but it's something that we can get more involved in and have support to do the things that need done. And so I think your help and the panel's help up here, and there's so many people. We have a list, in fact, of about 26 organizations, and I'm sure there's more that are not on our list that are in one way or another involved in this opioid remediation. It is a public health crisis, as you mentioned. And we just need as many people involved in this as we can get involved. So thank you all very much. And with that, we will sign off then. Thank you. Come on up, please. We're not under Robert's Rules of Order, so we don't have a formal adjournment and we don't have the formality. Nope, there you go.
My name is Karen Nelson, and my question is, in all of your panels and different communities and places that you guys have been talking about this, has there been any discussion at all about utilizing people either that are incarcerated or coming home from incarceration in the different categories like preventative measures, recovery inside the prisons, where we can't get funds in there? We don't have reimbursable funds to give behavioral health services a lot of times inside of our prisons. Has that been a discussion at all in your vast knowledge?
It's a great question. And I think right now what we're really just focusing on is the 4 categories and where we'd want to prioritize those things. And so what I'm hearing you say is that we should be prioritizing folks that are incarcerated or reentering that may not have access to the same level of services. So we're still in the receiving recommendation mode on these 4 subjects, more so than diving into specific recommendations. We're still receiving recommendations from community members. Is that accurate? Yeah.
I think that's a fair answer. Follow-up question?
I did want to mention, Kara, that when you talk about peer-to-peer, there used to be in the school district peer helpers. It was a program where peers were trained. However, unfortunately, that program is no longer in existence, but that is something as far as prevention and going upstream. They're not used as counselors, but they're used as guides. And what they do is they are an intermediary to the school counselor. And then when that student tends to be more open to talking to one of their peers, then they can be directed to a resource. So love to have that program, in elementary and middle school and high school. That would be a great idea. Thanks for the suggestion.
In looking at the list that I have in front of me, one of the organizations on the list is Mat-Su Prisoner Reentry Coalition. So there is an organization out there, and quite frankly, I think a lot of these are involved in that with the recovery efforts for those folks coming out as well. So.
Well, and you make a valid point that one of the priorities and this is coming from a little place of bias. So I am the CEO of a treatment provider. Treatment is one of the options on this priority list. However, it is really worth considering that some of these priorities or some of these areas of priority don't have access to funding. So for us, we have the capacity to bill Medicaid or receive grants or bill private insurance. There are efforts in education and recovery and even harm reduction that may or may not have those same avenues to receive funding. And so, as you're making a judgment or a recommendation to this committee, understanding where and what types of services are already getting funded should play a role in where we decide to spend.
One of the things I probably should have mentioned that once the assembly does approves the order and the amounts to go to organizations, then the borough will be responsible then to set up a group to receive any applications for funds. And then we'll just make sure they're qualified under the guidelines, the approval that the assembly gives us. And then the funds would go out that way. I envision they would have a limit, and I don't know what that limit might be, whether it's going to be 10,000 in an organization or something like that. But they'll get to decide that based on the information the committee presents to them when we're all done.
Would you like to let the audience know about the last meeting that's coming up? And then that way they know and they can tell their friends, colleagues.
Yes, absolutely. Are we cut off from the live stream, or are we still going? Okay. So absolutely. The idea here when we set these up was to reach out to as many people as we could, have one meeting in Palmer, one here in Willow, and one in Wasilla. The one that's coming up is on May 25th at the Curtis Menard Sports Center there in Wasilla. It'll be the same as this one from 6 to 8 p.m. And we would love to have participants come and talk at that one as well. And that will be the last one. And then from the three of those and from all of the surveys and from their technical expertise, then they will decide then where that needs assessment is and what to present to the assembly. So yes, if you want to go look at the Survey Monkey, if you want to come to the meeting next week on the 25th, we would love to have you do either or both. Thank you.